just cut some of this stuff real quick. Give me a sec. And the countdown is over. Slash start. Marker, patch, notes, rundown. All right, so welcome everyone to the Scuffed Patch 15.5 patch notes rundown by myself, Frodan. This is not the official patch notes itself. In fact, I believe as of 11 a.m., if you ever want to take a look at it, it's on tfttactics.com. You can always check the news section, but if you don't want to just read, oh, it's not up yet, so I'm a little bit early, but the NDA is over, so I can technically start now. But I don't work at Riot. They just send out a document. They send a PDF file, and then I copy it over, and I just make some fancy slides because sometimes reading patch notes just through text isn't as fun as going through all the highlighted colors and pictures and stuff. Okay. So this is raw. This is the 15.4 look back. This is what we want. So I try to look back and see. Oh, let me actually full screen this. I want to take a look at like what happened the previous patch so we can understand it. This is the TFT Academy tier list snapshot as of this morning. And we just want to recap like what this patch, how this patch developed and sort of like why contextually a lot of things have happened. So there was two phases of this patch. The first week of this patch was heavy reroll dominance. And that sort of like drove to the point where a lot of people said, oh my gosh, all you're supposed to do is just reroll something. The biggest offenders being stuff like Malzahar. You're playing heavyweight Malzahar and rerolling Malzahar in a couple different ways, or even just playing Malzahar for tempo. You were playing like Malzahar Jinx or like leveling, and you can play Fast 9. And also because Malzahar was really good with things like Shadow Clone. So a lot of people felt like, you know, that was really good. There was fan service, Xayah and Rakan. Kai'Sa was really good. And Kayle was also really strong. Crew, there was either other variations of reroll. But for the most part, everyone just felt like every game, you're supposed to play reroll, and you're supposed to just declare something in chat, and it just became kind of a way where to squeeze out a bunch of fast 8 comps. And Fast 9 was like pretty much just dead. It just felt like the tempo of the lobby was just way too fast, and it felt like you couldn't really do anything. The other half of it is that there were 4 cost lines out, but it was Socialite driven, right? We were playing Socialite Rise and Mentors. We were playing Socialite and Star Guardians. You were playing Socialite and Heavyweights because Heavyweights were very likely. You were playing Socialite and Juggernaut. And it wasn't just Socialite, but it was also trying to look for Socialite. That was actually a really big problem that people were doing, like fishing for Socialite on Aatrox. They would save a bunch of... The strategy was you would actually hold like 5 Aatroxes, 3 on your board, and then extra Aatrox. And then you would put the fruit on one of the Aatroxes. You didn't hit Socialite, sell it, refruit, didn't hit Socialite, sell it, and then try again. And then you just kept repeating this process, which, by the way, took your entire turn. So a lot of people felt like Socialite just removed from the game. Also, the positioning puzzle wasn't that interesting. It felt like more frustrating and awkward than anything like that. The hero augments. Dude, I have it written right here above my head. Just let me get to it, man. Just let me get to it. The hero augments. I'm right here, man. Okay. The post B patch. Man, there's like no, these guys are just like, get to it, get to the point. In the post B patch, we also saw a lot of dominance from hero augments because the thing about the B patch is that it nerfed a bunch of different stuff. And what they didn't hit ended up sticking around and being really strong, right? So the B patch nerfed things like Malzahar, fan service, Kai'Sa, Socialite. It killed a lot of this. It buffed Yuumi and Ashe. But what ended up happening was the best reroll comps that didn't get nerfed ended up being the best comps in the patch, aka hero augments. Hero augments were the best comps in the patch by far, and if you were able to get something like protagonist rolling, it would just destroy everything. But it wasn't like the nice thing about it is that it was situational, right? Sometimes you got to it, sometimes you didn't. And so there are other things that, you know, started becoming more prominent. People started playing more Karma and Sorcerers, and that's something that might be relevant going into this patch that you'll see. People also discovered some really, depends on how you view it, unfortunate, I guess, like bug abusing with Monster Trainer. Like people started toggling with Monster Trainer. What they did was if they found an early Lulu, they would put it on, let's say you want to play Kog'Maw. You would play a Kog'Maw. Then when you were rolling for a Kog'Maw, you would switch it to Rammus or Smolder and roll for those units and pull from the Rammus and Smolder pool, and then switch it back to Kog'Maw. Now, I know a lot of people are going to say, well, wait, hold on, Frodan. Riot said on multiple occasions that doesn't work. Unfortunately, it does work, and it doesn't really matter what they thought was the case. The pragmatic reality was multiple people were doing that. That was a big element of the patch, especially because they buffed Smolder. They buffed a couple things about Monster Trainer, so it was a lot stronger. So that was another fortunate thing. I'm actually covering some of the text, so I'll just hide it so I can read it for you guys here. Give me a sec. The other element of this patch is that it became a heavy emphasis on snowballing, aka tempo. You could play a lot of these lines. You could play Soul Fighter. You could play things like Karma, Sorcerer's Mentor, but then it just kind of became more about how good your opener was. And so snowballing your early lead was really important to make sure you can keep up with the line. And then finally, there were some new lines that did develop. We saw things like Bastion, reroll lines like Bastion Yasuo and Bastion Xayah kind of started becoming more and more popular. Jin Mundo made a little bit of a revival as well because they buffed Luchador for Mundo specifically to not drop aggro, things like that. So that's the look back of the patch, and that's important to contextualize so you understand some of the changes moving forward because they are going to nerf a lot of this, especially stuff up here in the S tier. Okay, I did this last patch rundown. I think it was pretty helpful. I want to give a table of contents of what to expect because this is basically the high-level summary of like what the patch is trying to do. The first is that there's a new game mode. And wait, why do I have Assassin Champion role? Okay, so that is not supposed to be there. Just imagine new game mode. It's supposed to be the new game mode of PvE. Sorry. Just ignore that part. But there's a new game mode coming out. I'll tell you a little about it in the next slide. Augments. A bunch of unpopular augments got disabled from the game. A really big part of this patch is that they actually took out something like 10 to 12 augments. We'll talk about them and why in a little bit. Traits, units, and items. They're going to restructure Crystal Gambit to make it easier to hit the higher tiers, but they're going to nerf the higher tiers. So that's going to encourage more people to play Crystal Gambit and but not be like, so for example, one of the changes is instead of getting an artifact anvil, you get a random artifact. So, but it's going to be easier to hit those breakpoints. And then there's a rework to Yuumi in terms of the structure of her ability. We'll talk a little bit about that. More Dog made a post about it. And Monster Trainer, this is another post that a lot of people know. They're basically redoing Monster Trainer and restructuring that. And then they're also reworking Titan's Resolve in a different way. So we'll talk about that too. So that's actually one of the bigger changes in terms of the patch. But the biggest portion coming up for this patch, and this is basically half of the patch slides. There's a lot. This is actually the most amount of slides I've ever made so far while doing that. This is like 4 times so far. Is that they are doing a power-up pass over a bunch of unplayed, useless, or just straight-up awkward power-ups. They're going to straight-up remove some power-ups. And then they're going to add some new ones, which we'll talk a little bit in a bit. So actually, well, they're not adding new ones necessarily. Like they're adding new things. Okay, this is actually a proper word. They're going to be adding new power-ups to champions, but we'll talk about that when we get there. Anyways, the first is the game mode. If you haven't heard, there's a new PvE game mode called Aoshin's Ascent. Aoshin, the way they define it is it's no time. It's in timerless PvE mode where you get permanent power progression. There's a new guide mechanic that you see right here. You choose your guide, Pantheon, Zoe, different versions of Zoe, Soraka, Teemo, and you use that to kind of go through like a map and you play it. And it's apparently like pretty hard if you don't actually do the progression. So if you're an experienced player, I think like it'll probably be something that you could probably beat on after you level up a lot. But if you're like a intermediate, I mean, there's none of you guys in chat who are beginner intermediate players. You guys are all really good at TFT. But if you're a beginner intermediate player, you might have trouble climbing this. So it's one of those things where maybe you can have an opportunity to take your time, play through some puzzle modes, and you're trying to ultimately save corrupted little legends. That's kind of what the whole lore is of this game mode. I like PvE mode. I think that in general, this type of thing has a ton of potential. So definitely play it. Give us some feedback to Riot because I think ultimately these are really good learning tools. I think one of the really cool things about Ocean's Descent is if you have a friend, a family member, or just somebody else that just wants to play TFT, but they don't have time to play through, all the games, or maybe they're, like I'm a parent. Sometimes I have to put games down on my phone. You can just come back to it, right? There's no time. You can just like really go methodically through and read all the stuff and not get overwhelmed. I think it's a really good gateway tool, a gateway drug to get them hooked on the narcotic known as teamfight tactics. All right, let's go into traits. So we talked about this in the table of contents, so you guys kind of knew about it, but the big trait rework or restructuring is to Crystal Gambit. Crystal Gambit is going to give higher multipliers now on stage 3 and 4. So all of a sudden, a splashing in of Crystal Gambit when you're already losing might be something you can consider doing so you can get better rewards. But the trade-off is, they're not just straight up buffing, is that they're actually going to be nerfing the rewards itself at some of these tiers, right? So the 210 reward, instead of getting a full artifact anvil, you're going to get a random artifact instead, which is way less consistent. If you can choose it, way stronger than getting a random one. The 250 rewards, no longer getting a random rating item, you're getting a lucky item chest instead. But again, to compensate that on the other side, because the rewards are a lot worse, Crystal Gambit, the kill thresholds have now been reduced. And so this is what happens when you play 5 Crystal Gambit, and it tells you how many kills that you need to get in order to activate like an orb. So now instead of getting, let's say, when you get 22 and you're like, oh my God, I'm never gonna get 22 kills for the big reward, you only need to get 16 now. But again, the rewards are reduced. And then Crystal Gambit 7 itself has been nerfed. So Crystal Gambit, way too strong of a late game inevitability, especially on trainer golems and things like that. You're just going to get less HP and less damage in it, because I think most players have understood that 7 Crystal Gambit is way too good when it starts snowballing. Over on the crew side, they're nerfing crew, and this is because they're going to be buffing Ziggs. There's a little bit of a preview later on, and so they want to keep it power neutral, but make it feel better to play around Ziggs. And so they didn't want to buff Ziggs while keeping crew where it was, because then it'd probably be too good once you hit Ziggs. The rocket damage is pretty significant because of how many rockets they shoot, so we'll see. But this also does mean that crew, before you get to the peak power Ziggs, is going to be a little bit worse, so something to think about. But overall, this should be power neutral. The second page of traits, they're going to be buffing edgelords, specifically 4 and 6 edgelords. I don't think anyone's really playing Samira and Volibear as a duo, and that is kind of a shame, because that feels like theoretically the tree actually kind of works if you play 4 edgelord, because you have Samira and Volibear and Shen, which leads to Braum as the Bastion, right? And you have a lot of different ways you can link that together. So they're just trying to make that buff, and I think this is justified. No one out here is playing edgelord. However, I will say one thing that I don't know if is actually fixed in the patch notes, but edgelord emblem is currently bugged, where it doesn't actually work correctly. And I know this because Wage and Iverson actually said this. So part of the reason why I think edgelord struggles is because the emblem itself actually literally doesn't work as intended. So I'm not sure if this means that you should be taking edgelord emblem and just being like, oh, I'm going to play 6 edgelords. Just keep that in mind, because edgelord is supposed to reduce the armor count, I believe, of like the units it's hitting, and I believe it like resets. But don't quote me on that exactly function, but basically the TLDR is it doesn't really work. I see a lot of edgelord bastion. No, incorrect. You actually see a lot of bastions and then some edgelord splashes. It's the inverse, and that's a really, really big distinction because we're buffing 4 and 6 bastions specifically. Okay, monster trainer. The big change here is that monster trainer level system has been removed. Monsters no longer gain 1% max HP per level, and the monster trainer cash out removed from the Crystal Gambit rewards, which I didn't even know was a thing, by the way. Monster trainer, apparently there is a cash out that gives you a level 100 monster trainer, which is like really, really strong. But yeah, I that's also nerfed. And I think it's important to actually briefly talk about sort of the intention behind it, because I could explain why, but Tim, who works on the balance team, Trucy, actually posted this morning, or sorry, late last night, about the intention behind it. He said, TFT has a ton of systems. I'm going to try to go through it as fast as I can, but try to highlight the part that's important. TFT has a ton of systems ranging from augments and items to the new power-ups introduced to KO Coliseum. Systems offer a great way to diversify gameplay, but when there's too many mediocre options, the system feels like they're fighting against you to try to actually find the good ones. Similarly, when these systems are laid on top of each other, the subpar options become even more apparent, as a player with 4 good options is now much stronger than a player who picked 4 okay options, right? This is basically why people say flex is dead, because the power gap between the best and not so best is so high. This results in a system where it feels like a lot of traps rather than satisfying discoveries, and we're trying to improve on it. Coming in this patch, we'll be updating 2 systems, Power-Up and Monster Trader, to help people feel less restricted in team building. First, Power-Ups felt very hit or miss with a plethora of mediocre on each champion. They're going to be trimming that, basically. Our goal here is to consistently offer reasonable options whenever a Power Fruit is used. The second is Monster Trainer. We'll be removing their leveling system and granting Monster Trainers their full power instantly. While the leveling system was a complex system, pairing them with threats often made them playing very narrow. Encountering Lulu on stage 4 was never exciting, as fielding a ramping champion with no trades was never worth the utility value. This change will let players feel better about slotting in mid-game trainers as a stopgap carry. Right, so the whole idea is that this should theoretically give them more flexibility. They're going to buff the Monster Trainer units themselves, but no longer have any HP scaling for level and just can't level in general. All right, so with that, let's go ahead and go into the 1-cost champions. There's only one change here. Kennen's getting a buff. Kennen's going to be getting better heal, but lower spell damage. And the intention here is because they think Kennen is not a real tank. I think one of the more awkward things, for example, is if you get Build-A-Bud Kennen, get Worth the Wait Kennen. No one's really excited to just try to play around Kennen as a tank. So theoretically, this should make him a lot better. This makes him a stronger early game tank, definitely, because you're not really playing Kennen for the damage. So they're just trying to make him into an actual tank as opposed to, well, whatever he is now, which is just kind of synergy bot and situationally an item holder. This doesn't affect, I believe, his hero augment, by the way, but there will be things that do later on. Okay, 2-cost champions. These are pretty big buffs. They're buffing Gangplank, and Gangplank is getting a pretty sizable buff. And the reason why it might look like just a small attack buff, but you have to remember that attack speed scales with his traits like Duelists, and also it affects how often he casts, which means how often he prints gold. But the important thing is, and this is a spoiler alert for the rest of the patch, is that they are removing stretchy arms from the game. You cannot, at least that's what they're saying, you should not be able to find stretchy arms. So, and that is going to apply to every champion. Gangplank is not only losing stretchy arms, but every champion is going to be losing stretchy arms. So that should be one of the things that theoretically encourages you to play Gangplank, but you can't just do the silly full range extension. But you could recreate that if you have RFC, for example. All right, Katarina is also getting a really huge buff as well. This, by the way, should make Gangplank overs really, really good with Meg. Katarina is also getting a pretty big buff. Basically, a lot of people don't play Kat unless they have the absolute perfect items and augment and power-up start. She's just weak. If you actually look at the stats, I was looking at it the other day. I'm not sure if that's like 100% true, but if you literally just look at the stats and you just sort by worst unit in the game, it's Katarina, 4.9. It just feels like playing her is bad, so they just buff her. It just makes it's at all ranks. It's not just like a high elo thing. It's a low elo thing too. Katarina deserves a buff. And also they're going to, and again, another spoiler alert, they're going to be reintroducing Veteran. So if you're excited about playing Katarina and you're excited to try the power up, Veteran is the way you can play Katarina as a mentor. So maybe you can find a way to play mentor Katarina. 3 costs. Now there's a lot of change. Now it says 1 of 5, but that's because each of these monster trainers gets like a giant novel. So it's not as many changes 3 costs, but 3 cost reroll is something that they care about and they feel like they want to push a little bit more this patch. The big one is Ahri. Ahri's getting a pretty sizable straight up spell damage buff. They're adjusting her technically to like make sure that her overkill flat damage is not as high, which is relevant because that's what also spills over. But they're trying to increase her raw base spell damage, and that scales based off the HP threshold that their opponents are at. So if you're not familiar with Ahri, she shoots her heart, right? But that does more damage to targets below 50% HP. And then that overkill damage is going to spill over more. So Ahri is going to be really, really, really powerful at 3-star. And so she is going to be highly contested. However, Star Guardians are a popular tree. Maybe she's going to be limited, and maybe more people are going to play sorcerers. She might be limited by the number of Ahris available, but if you do get an Ahri reroll spot, they really want her to hit hard. and she's going to hit very, very hard, especially because she's already very good with one artifact called Ludens. If you guys have ever played Ahri Ludens, it is pretty powerful, especially if you get Ahri 3. Some would say obscenely powerful. So I expect to see Ahri a lot next patch, especially out of an orb. This is just really strong. Jace is getting buffed as well. So they're buffing Jace, they're buffing Katarina. Things about the Battle Academia line are getting a little bit better. They're trying to make, I think they're trying to make it so that Jace and Caitlyn can get brought up a little bit. If you want to reroll the Jace Caitlyn line, I think they feel like Caitlyn's in a good spot, but Jace is getting a really sizable buff specifically at 3-star. 3-star Jace from 365 to 425 is no joke. The 2-star version, obviously, you know, a little bit better, but the 3-star version is, yeah, I mean, they want 3-star reroll to be really strong. So if you guys love 3-cost reroll, good news. Kog'Maw. So the red stuff, you already know, right? No longer gains ability power per level, no longer gains attack speed. But to compensate for it, one of the mechanics of Kog'Maw leveling up was that as he leveled, he got more range. They're going to give higher base stats to him. So now, instead of 4 range, he's 5, and they're going to buff his base attack speed, which is important because of the way Kog'Maw ramps. And then they're buffing his on-hit damage as well. Now, the important thing, and the on-hit damage looks like really high, right? Because it's like a 40% buff or something crazy like that. The important thing to recognize here is that because they're not leveling and they're not scaling, their top-end power is going to be lower, but their baseline is going to be higher. And so I think overall, in terms of like a Kog'Maw reroll, the net is actually going to be like a slight nerf to the average expected like 3-star Kog'Maw power state if you can get there. But you should be able to splash Kog'Maw in way more often if you find Kog'Maw 2. That's the hope that they're going for. And that's intentional because theoretically, units like Kog'Maw and Smolder and Rammus are very flexible. So you shouldn't be able, they shouldn't necessarily be having as full power as something like Ahri, right? Ahri is something to build around, but Kog'Maw and Smolder should be able to splash. Nico's getting a buff. They're reducing her mana, and they're increasing her durability to just be 40 durability at all levels. Right now, it's 35 for 1 and 2-star, and they're making her mana better. Nico's just not a very good tank. If you ever play Star Guardians, I think a lot of people have known at this point. How many people here have Pocket Recombobbed? Like at the very beginning of the game, and it turns to Nico 2, and you're like, okay, cool. Star Guardian, I have Syndra, I have Nico. Maybe like this should 5-streak, right? Like Nico with protectors, everything like that. That is not the case. Nico is just not very reliable. She's a very powerful effect for the Star Guardian to like increase the healing and shielding, especially with augments. But Nico herself is not very good as a tank. Unless you get her to 3-star and you're building 6 protector, she's not really doing very much. So on paper, it kind of makes sense. But again, it kind of creates this dynamic where maybe some of the 3 costs are going to be really powerful to play around. So just keep an eye out for that. Also, again, this is not the hero augment. This is different. This is tank Nico. It's functionally different than the others. Rammus. So Rammus has a lot going on. He's getting health buff, mana buff, the raw amount of shield he got. Actually, I didn't even realize how long Rammus's text box was until I actually sat there and looked through it after this patch. But they're buffing his shield. They're buffing his stun duration. His stun duration used to scale off of levels. At level 15 and 30, he got longer stun. That's just going to happen with star level now. He gets more HP on taunt. Max HP, that is. So for per enemy taunted, it's higher now. Now his spell damage applies on landing as well when the shield breaks. So you're able to double dip there. Spell damage will actually scale less off resistances, though, because you're obviously going to build him as a tank. And then no longer gains stun duration per level, and the baseline stun duration is going to increase. So this is just basically buffing Rammus' stats, and again, not really scaling nearly as hard because he doesn't have his monster trainer. And yes, they did fix the Rammus thing. We'll talk about that later. Smolder is getting a mana buff from 60 to 50 at base, and then spell damage increase. Obviously no longer gets AD per level, and innately gets 30% armor reduction. And that's because at level 30, Smolder got 60 armor reduction and reduced his max mana, I want to say by 20. And so this is sort of the halfway point. Basically, Smolder already gets some of that baseline armor ignore as well as mana reduction that he gets at full power, but He's not going to get quite as much. Then Swain is getting adjusted, so that way it just feels like I guess the way they feel like is like if you get rewarded for having Swain live longer, as opposed to just like have Swain hope that he casts one time and just like dies. So this is an adjustment that should theoretically be power neutral, but better if you get to 3-star Swain. So if you play Ari Swain, I mean, Ari Swain I anticipate to be an actual really powerful comp if you can get there. I don't know how you can get Ari 3 and Swain 3 in the current meta right now, but maybe next patch, if you're able to get to it, it would be very powerful. So just keep an eye out for that. Also, they are buffing elements of Crystal Gambit and nerfing others, so just keep in mind that that is affected also by Swain. Finally, they are nerfing Viego as well. Again, duelist attack speed are really crucial, especially for Viego because his abilities depend on how many times he's attacking. So they're nerfing Viego, and you might have heard before what I said, that they are removing stretchy arms from the game. So Viego is, well, he's going to take a little bit of a backseat this patch, I think. So maybe the Viego hard forcers will have to figure out something else out. And then as we talked about as well with the crew, is that to compensate the crew nerf, or to compensate the buff to Ziggs, they nerf crew a very little bit. But Ziggs getting attack speed buff, and that's pretty big because of Ziggs passive that works with his attack speed. So Ziggs is going to be a little bit better. Maybe we finally keep Ziggs out of an orb at stage 1. I think I have yet to do that a single time this set. So maybe I'm going to try it and see if that's better. Because quite frankly, you just don't play around Ziggs ever unless you're playing stage 3 crew or something. And that's if you high roll Ziggs too. 4 cost champions. 4 cost champions. How we doing, by the way? Soul Fighter dead again. Yay. You probably didn't play. That means you probably didn't play this past patch. Soul Fighter definitely was not dead this past patch. Especially if you didn't have Viego. Okay, so Akali is getting buffed. Don't freak out too bad, because this is actually important to distinguish. So Akali basically does not have a strong identity other than the synergy bot. And maybe if you high roll her early, an item holder for someone else, right? If you're playing a Rise composition, you can have Akali hold the Archangels for Rise and the voice stat for Rise, and you just have her hold the item. And that's basically it. So what they're trying to do is Akali, as written by the patch notes, should be a 1-star carry Punisher, as well as people that punish lazy position to isolate. So if you love playing Akali and you love smashing low rollers, they're buffing her single target damage and her dash damage. So that way, at the intention of her this is that she will stomp like the 1-star Yumi, the 1-star Ashe in the back line that is very vulnerable. And so they want Akali to actually be able to finish her off. Because the problem with Akali was that she didn't do enough single target. So the way you actually built her in the past was like Archangels and Shojin and Rageblade. So that way she would ramp up and eventually just kill like a bunch of targets over time. They're buffing her single target damage. This is not actually gonna, I think, bring back the old build of Akali. But I think that the builds that want to play Akali, like I can imagine Mentor Mech maybe trying to play around Akali now a little bit more often than just Volibear. That should create some more options on the roll down. However, they are buffing things like Katarina. They are buffing other elements around Akali. So maybe like Kennen, for example, and a couple of things you're gonna see. And they're also reworking other things like the power up pool, which we'll talk about. So it's kind of hard to say, but either way, they are buffing Akali. And it's deserved. Who here has played Akali as your primary carry in the past 2 patches? I don't think, and you guys are just literally lying, or you're just saying like how you played her for like 2 rounds as an item holder. No one's doing that. So they want for every unit to feel like they can actually do something. Ashe is getting a pretty significant hit. I personally think this kneecaps Ashe a lot because, yeah, she's getting buffed, but they're trying to wait. Sorry, this should read damage per arrow, I think. Give me a sec here. I want to open up the actual patch notes just to make sure that I'm reading it. Okay, Ashe spell damage is going. Let's read Ashe spell damage. Sorry, I didn't write that in. But they're also removing her scaling with attack speed on the number of arrows. And this is to decouple her from feeling like she's really tied to duelists and tied to like raw attack speed like Rage Blade. However, I feel like that is a pretty big deal. And I am not entirely sure what that means. But by raising her base damage, theoretically, this increases her flexibility, right? And a lot of people are complaining in chat. You have to remember that in a vacuum, this is what you wanted. You wanted to make her less dependent on her trait and more independently powerful. So theoretically, this is like what you guys wanted, because now she doesn't have to feel like you have to get the attack speed going in order to get, like, because you just have to. You have to build her with attack speed. Ash's scaling with attack speed is some of the highest attack speed scaling we've ever seen in TFT history. So, yeah. No, I don't. Yes, you did. This is exactly what you got. You guys want more flexible options. So, I mean, no one asked for, like, Ash to lose her scaling attack speed, but this is what you guys want. Does it make her less fun? Maybe, though. So, maybe they'll end up buffing her. Maybe Ash is unplayable. Maybe the Crystal Gambit rework also makes this really difficult. Okay, Samira. Dash now ties breaks based on units closer to her current location. More likely to dash to her current target. So this is just a logic rework. I thought this had to do with her first half of her ability, her soul shot. This is actually her ultimate, like where she jumps in and she just does her arsenal and AoE circles. It affects that. I thought this was like kind of her initial, where she like shoots a bullet and then dashes with her style, shoots a bullet and then dashes. That's not what this is affecting. It's affecting her actual jump AoE. And so theoretically, this creates a situation. This is supposed to fix the situations where it feels like who she jumps on for her ult is less random. Sometimes it feels like she ults from the bottom right and jumps to the top left out of like nowhere instead of like her current target, where it makes more sense logically speaking. So just improving logic on Samira. I have no clue if that ends up being something that is all of a sudden amazing for Soul Fighter, which is why it's in yellow. I have no clue. Or maybe all of a sudden she cheeses backline less. So time will tell. Okay, Volibear, attack speed. They're buffing Volibear's raw spell attack speed. He gains a bunch of attack speed when he casts. That plus the edgelord buffs is a pretty big deal. Volibear should be better, and Volibear might be back. In fact, he might even be one of those primary carries as opposed to a secondary. So we'll see Volibear hopefully back. And Volibear, again, everyone got different power up pools, so just keep that in mind. Now, there's another big change, and this is to Yuumi. And so I want to read another series of posts by Mortdog. So we're going to have Mortdog commentary. All right, we're going to have Mortdog commentary on Yuumi changes. He posted this a week ago. I'm not Mortdog, but I'll try to do my best Mortdog impression. Good morning, everybody. Hope your week is going well. I'm working on future stuff right now, and it's going quite well. So this weekend, I actually got to ran out of stuff to do that project, and yesterday had a little bit of time to help live prepare the 15.5 patch. My project was to take a look at Yuumi. I went pretty hard on the feline. The exact changes, I'm sure, will show up on data mine sites later today, but that's not what I want to talk about. Instead, I want to talk about a bit of part of the job that people seem to be struggling to understand the most, and it's frankly the hardest part about taking a good foundation to set and making it great, and that's getting the details right. See, it's actually pretty fun and not too challenging to come with the fun idea for a champion or trait, just like it's not too hard to point out something is weak or strong. Right now, Yuumi is weak. That much is obvious. But why is she weak? What about her shape is causing the issue? I think they're talking shape as like her identity. They use the shape as a way. They use the word shape to define where does Yuumi fit in terms of her ability, her trait, her spell, things like that. That's what. This sounds like Yuumi. It sounds like Mortdog might have an unhealthy obsession with Yuumi and her characteristics, but it's not. It's just that's what they're describing it. What part of the details isn't exactly right that lead up to stuff like dependence on traits or rough experience, and this is where math comes in. See, Yuumi had a couple of issues. If we abstractly represent her first cast as 100%, the question becomes, how much do things affect this power? Since her pages go from 15 to 20, her second cast becomes 133%. A 33 boost per cast is massive. This means before you start getting to her big chunky damage, you need to get to cast 3 and 4. Hell, the fourth cast is double the power of the first cast, right? Because Yumi's a scaling champ. The more she casts, the more pages she gets. So you need her cast to scale those casts ASAP, right? That means blue buff and Shojin would be good. No. Well, no. Because due to Yumi's channel animation takes a large amount of time, the uptime of her auto attacks is relatively low. And since she's a prodigy, going for 4 mana region and 9 mana region as sharp is going from 0 to 5. This means she has to be bounced around having a lot of prodigy active, which means her items have to be full damage, which is pretty intuitive. If the ramping champion doesn't want ramping items, which is weird. I'm reading it fast because there's a bunch of like nerdy like math stuff. So basically, mana is not that good on Yumi. And this is even getting into her BA contribution. Currently, if you math it out, 7 BA gives Yumi a 42% damage increase, except that's only true if your target has 0 MR. Since it's true damage, the math gets more complicated. Again, using our 100%, that means 100 magic and 45 true. If the target just has 100 MR, pretty common for front knowledge, your damage is reduced by 50%, meaning that you're now doing 50 magic and 42 true to BA is almost doubling the damage. So this is basically saying that Battle Academia is too important to Yumi, and mana is bad. He's just explaining it, using a bunch of fancy numbers. So in totality, you have a champion who's scaling way too well with Battle Academia and an unhealthy damage type. A champion who spends so much time channeling her spell that mana regen for Shojin aren't good. A champion needs to cast 3 times to get really chunky damage but can't get it done through that channel. All in all, a very twisted package. Wow, tell me how you really feel. This is the stuff players won't notice. They'll just say, she's weak. So what did I do? More attack speed so she's not dependent on Prodigy. Lower the power of the true damage pages from 42 to 35% of 7 BA. Raise the starting pages from 15 to 20, but lower damage per cast from 5 to 4. It's a pretty substantial change in a larger package, and that honestly, most players won't notice other than she feels stronger. And this is just thinking about one champ. We have 60 of those, not to mention power-ups, etc. This level of detail is something that finding people who can really break down stuff is tough. Man, is he just saying that if you can break stuff like this down, that means Mortdog will offer you a job. Okay, this is too long. Gotta take the kids to school. TLDR, Mortdog's a nerd. Have a good day and take it easy. Thank you, Mort, for your guest commentary. So that is the summary of Yumi's changes. Base speed increased. Base page increased. Starting page increased. But nerfing a bunch of the things that make her good with Battle Academia and her true damage, which is honestly, true damage is pretty unhealthy to become too common. And what this should theoretically do is increase Yumi's flexibility outside of Prodigy, right? We don't know if that's the case, but maybe you can play, out of Battle Academia. Maybe you play 5 Prodigy with other things now. Maybe you play Prodigy with more Bastions. Maybe you play Prodigy, like maybe you can splash Yumi and Star Guardians now, right? Like theoretically, that's what they're aiming for, is to try to create herself a way, make her less dependent on the trait and increase her flexibility. This is what you guys wanted, so we'll see. And if you didn't ask for this, too bad. That's what you're getting. 6 Bastion Yumi, right? Theoretically, you could play 6 Bastion Yumi. Stall for frontline. Let her play alongside just Leona and Garen, so on and so forth. 5 cost champions. We have 2 changes. We have Braum getting more AoE damage, which I really thought Braum was quite good. So now Braum might easily just become one of the best 5 costs you could possibly play, if not the best. So I think Braum is already really strong, so we'll see. And Seraphine is getting an interesting buff. Seraphine is getting a buff to her resistances bonus and her health bonus. And this is specifically what they wrote in the patch notes, is that they want Seraphine to feel like she's getting extra bonuses played in different trees. They don't want Seraphine to feel like she's only played in Star Guardian. In fact, I think the things that they called out was if you played Seraphine in 6 heavyweights, this should theoretically help out the heavyweights a lot, right? Because if you play Poppy plus 6 heavyweights and then you splash in Seraphine as a backline carry, you should theoretically feel like 6 heavyweight plus Seraphine 2 is an actual thing. And if you find a way to play into like Bastions or something like that, you should be able to play 6 Bastion Seraphine. That's what they want. I don't know. This is one of those things where I'm like, I'm not sure if that's true, but they want Seraphine to feel like in those situations, you can play for it and you can get a ton of damage. Does this make Star Guardians broken? I think Seraphine was already very good in Star Guardians, but that is definitely something to think about going into the patch. They want more. The general takeaway is that they want to make a lot of these units more independently powerful. They want 3 costs to be stronger within the things that they're already played. They want some of these 4 and 5 costs to be more independently powerful so you can flex them. All right, so that is it for the augments. We're coming up on an ad break, so we'll take our time through it. But hope you guys are enjoying it so far. Augments. The following augments have been disabled from the game. And there's a pretty good list of them. A lot of them are crowns and crests, but these are a combination of wildly unpopular or just not good. So we'll go through them. First is Bastion, Crest, and Crown, which is actually kind of surprising. I feel like this patch, people have been clicking on it, but they're taking away the Bastion, Crest, and Crown. They're taking away Heavyweight, Crest, and Crown. They're taking away Juggernaut, Crest, and Crown, and taking away Strategist, Crest, and Crown. And I think that is because a lot of people don't I don't think they feel like these foundational traits are like that exciting to play around. Like, wow, my augment is a Juggernaut emblem. And I think a lot of people are like, I think it's unpopular, even though you can find spots to play. Like, I think taking a Heavyweight crown situationally was really good, right? If you had a Heavyweight on a Mundo in the past, it was really, really strong. If you're playing 6 Bastion this patch, 6 Bastion was pretty good if you found like a Bastion emblem. So that element has been kind of unexciting for players. And also the big thing about removing it is that you should be able to feel more excited on average about your augments and less trash.
Man, I'm getting more dogged again.
I mixed up these icons. Gain the Edge and New Contender should be flipped. Thank you, Power Moves. New Contenders is the augment that says anyone can become the Supreme Cell. That was really good. That was back in the beginning of the set. That was really good on All Out Cassante, but now they just feel like it's actually bait in a lot of Supreme Cell lines. Like if you play reroll Kaisa, you should not be clicking New Contenders, right? If you're playing reroll Darius, you should not be clicking New Contenders because you don't want other people to steal the Supreme Cell buff away from your primary carry. And then Gain the Edge is your edgelords get more attack speed. It's basically something that helps buff your existing edgelords. The fact that a lot of people don't even know what that is, just guys to show you that it's not worth it. They're also, this one's probably the one I'm most sad about. They're actually removing Tiniest Titan from the game. I thought that augment was really funny, and I mean, sometimes when you really want Tiniest Titan, it was actually great, but they're removing it from the game. I think it's because the only times you ever took Tiniest Titan was specifically to abuse things that you needed more HP for, such as a Crystal Gambit. Otherwise, Tiniest Titan was extremely poor in a lot of situations for a Prismatic Augment, especially on 3-2. They're removing Beggars Can Be Choosers because there are some unfortunate bugs related with, or not, I don't know if it's bugs, it's just like an unintended interaction, which I guess you can define as a bug. But Beggars Can Be Choosers has been abused to actually roll for augments that shouldn't be showing up at certain times. So one thing that's been alerted was that you could do Beggars Can Be Choosers, and then if you have Prismatic Finale, you can actually roll all the prismatic options at 4-2 and see something, and basically you get offered augments that you can't see and you shouldn't be able to see, one of them being 9 lives. And so 9 lives at 4-2 is a guaranteed like second place because you just have 9 lives starting at 4-2, and it's just like way too OP. So yeah, also if you are like caught doing this, I can't promise that you're not going to get in trouble. So try not to do any exploits with Beggars Can Be Choosers, but it'll no longer be around. And then finally, I'll Be the Head's arms and leg augments. This is unfortunately a removal, not because they think for balance or anything reasons, but because they have not been able to actually successfully get the bug to resolve. They promised that if you saw I'll Be the arms, you'll see I'll Be the legs, or whatever order it is. That has not been true over the past patch and a half. They keep finding exception cases, and they said, you know what, it's just not working, so they're disabling from the game. So yeah, you're not. It's yes, you can stop sending in reports because that's not going to be possible anymore. It's been pretty disappointing. I have personally gotten screwed by this, I think 3 times. I keep, every time I've been in the best case scenario for this, I've missed on the augment. So I've been pretty sad. Also, there's been weird stuff on the other end. Sometimes you can see like I'll Be the Head on the last augment, even though you don't see any of the others. I'm not sure if that was unintended, but either way, I'm sad because I never got the tuber for it, but I'm also fine with it because I kept getting baited by it. All right, second round of augment changes. Another one. This is the augment that says if you make an item, get a second copy of it. They're buffing it from 1 gold to 5. So that's That's a huge buff. Now you're gonna be able to make a lot of gold. Aura farming is now getting buffed to be giving you the 2-star 5 cost on stage 4-3 instead of 4-6. This is probably the one I raised my eyebrow the most in. I have no idea what the aura farming augment stats are right now, but I have to imagine that it must be absolutely awful for it to be at 4-3. This is an insane pace to be able to get it. At 4-3, you get a 2-star 5 cost that you can intentionally build around, especially buffs to things like, for example, we saw like Seraphine from. We'll see. I think this is probably the most questionable augment buff of the patch. But I know one thing for sure is that I'm probably going to be clicking on this thing as often as I can to see if it actually is good. Maybe it's terrible. Who knows? Maybe it's terrible. Because you have to remember that you are down a gold augment for 2.5 stages. But, I mean, 4-3 is significantly earlier, especially because how 4-3 is played. Like, stage 4 is played as, like, the defining tempo of the patch currently. It might change next patch. But how many, like, basically everyone cares about how strong they are for stage 4. And the reason why 4-6 is a big deal is because you lose so much life getting to 4-6, but the payoff is you get a 2-star 5 cost, and maybe that stabilizes you for that round going into stage 5. But now that you get it on 4-3, you theoretically can spike so much earlier, so you have to roll less gold, and now you have all those lives to either go to level 9 and convert that into a win, right? So that is where I think this is one of the scariest parts of the patch for me. We'll see. Bronze for Life is getting buffed in both categories, both Bronze for Life 1 and 2. They're trying to increase the damage and durability. This is a huge buff for certain fast 9 lines. So, I mean, aura farming, Bronze for Life, maybe that's that fast 9 will be back. But I think the intent is that flexible comps will come back, or like you take Bronze for Life and now you can just kind of play a bunch of flex lines. Theoretically, maybe you start splashing in less of the verticals and more of this. I think they just want to push and nudge it towards that direction, but maybe at the cost of Fast 9 being a little bit too strong. We'll see. It kind of depends on how the meta is. If the meta is 3-cost reroll oriented, maybe that won't be the case. This is one of the biggest nerfs to augments, besides straight up disabling it. Caretaker's Chosen Radiant is now given at level 8 instead of level 7. That is a profound difference. You have to pay 40 something more gold to see your Radiant now, which is and this also means that certain 3-cost reroll lines can't use it, which might be a good thing. Now, if they buffed Ari, for example, and they buffed all these other 3-cost lines, maybe this augment would be way too busted, but this augment already was very, very strong this set because of the nature of Radiant items. So we'll see what this ends up doing. It could make it that you can't click this augment in a lot of situations now, but if you can, because you're going to get to level 8, maybe it's good. Cure Package is the best gold augment in the game, and it just kept giving you basically just infinite rewards. Now it only gives you 2 more stages of rewards, which is a huge nerf as well. And that's justified because, I mean, basically, people would be playing, and just as a preview, they're also nerfing Tesla Coil. But they would take Care Package and Tesla Coil, and all of a sudden, they just deal like 5,000 extra damage per fight in the first 15 seconds for free. And it was super obscene, and they're nerfing that, and that's justified. Escape Velocity is getting buffed from 6 to 10. This is where every X amount of gold that you spend on rerolls, I think Escape Velocity buffs your attack speed, or you get velocity stacks, and that buffs your attack speed on crew. So it's like a crew augment reroll buff. Expected and Unexpectedness, items rewards reduced. What are those item rewards? How are they reduced? I don't know. You'll have to, I guess we'll just have to figure it out. I guess someone will figure it out and they'll post in like some chart stuff. But yeah, just enjoy. Give him the chair. Dr. Mundo spell damage. I think they're nerfing like some of the gold around it, but I'm not sure. Give him the chair, Mundo. So people have been asking for hero augment nerfs. Here are they. So Mundo's hero augment's getting nerfed by a pretty substantial amount. Way less AD conversion, way less HB conversion. Justified. This thing is way too good. They are introducing Grand Slam. Grand Slam is like the luchadors jump immediately into battle and get some buffs. So with that plus Volibear, maybe Grand Slam Volibear. I don't know, maybe you pick him and give him the Chair Mundo. Probably not. Maybe there's some ways for you to get some cool luchador builds going back in. They're buffing investment strategy health per interest from 7 to 8. And I don't believe they're buffing the other one, right? So this just means prismatic investment health or strategy health is the same. which makes investment strategy look really, really bad. Just putting it out there. They buffed the gold from 7 to 8, and now this 8 is the same as the prismatic version. So, little bonus tip: probably don't pick investment strategy prismatic. It looks terrible. 9 lives, also getting pretty big nerf. There's a big wave to nerfs to their rewards. 2 lives for 9 lives. The gold is now removed from rewards just straight up. 9 lives on 1 life. No longer gets Masterwork upgrade and no longer gets artifact. Instead, getting item chest and a remover, as well as 3 component animals remover. This is a massive nerf. This is huge. I mean, 9 lives no longer is going to probably be the 1 HP win out type of comp for reroll stuff. So just trying to lower the baseline power of all these like augments that give a ton of resources. And that's good because, I mean, it's just, one of the things that they talked about is trying to lower the amount of artifacts being offered in the game, but also lower the number of Radiant items. And remember how they made Radiant relics plus Masterwork upgrade exclusive? Well, 9 lives is one of the few ways you can still like circumnavigate that. You can play 9 lives, get Masterwork upgrade, and click Radiant items, and guess what? Your 3-star Darius now has double Radiant items because you played 9 lives. And so that I think they're trying to make sure to cut down some of that and continue to make sure that that's a thing. Perfect Form Zac, another hero augment that was way too strong, very OP. They're nerfing it. This is a really big deal, so Zac's gonna bounce one time slower, first time slower, and they're nerfing his scaling as well as his damage. So it's a pretty big nerf. 295 to 225 is a huge nerf. We'll see if that makes him unplayable. We'll see if it's like, you know, protagonist only. We'll see. Pocket Rican Bob has been banned on 3-2. They didn't add any commentary to this. My interpretation of it is that it probably has just a bunch of interactions that they don't want. So I'm not sure. But I guess the dream is dead where you could roll down for a 3-star 1 cost and then Pocket Rican Bob on 3-2 through a 3-star 3 cost. Or build a bud, right? Build a bud into that as well. Preemptive protection shield got buffed. This is the one that is basically like your protector shield another protector at the beginning of the fight. They're just increasing more of that. Raid boss getting buffed, which is really scary for some of the 6 Bastion boards that already play it, by the way. There are some boards that play this. Also, the thing that makes it the most frightening is that you can still get raid boss with some hero augments. You can get raid boss with Garen hero augment. You can get raid boss with Shin's hero augment. So now I guess those comps just win the game. I hope that I don't think they remove that interaction where you can get both. I think that should be highly illegal. So if you ever see raid boss and you're playing a hero augment around Bastions, you should absolutely click on it because I think you won the game. Solo leveling is now reduced in HP and durability. I suppose solo leveling was way too good when it was good. And that is a massive nerf because this just means you're very unlikely to 5-streak a snowball. So it's okay. Solo leveling was really good for a while this set. And, you know, now solo leveling can actually be a true mid augment in representation to the level of quality of that anime. Fun though. Fun anime, but mid as hell. And then starter kit, 4 to 8 gold. They're just buffing starter kit, giving you more gold. We love it. So augments, 4 out of 4. Tesla coil damage nerf. This augment is just ridiculous when you get to like the thieves. Like you get 2 pairs of thieves gloves, you get care package, you get so many items. You're playing on Scuttle Puddle, you're playing on loot subscription. Just toning down the scaling. It still does a pretty decent amount in the early game, but basically the scaling is like significantly nerfed. You see it's 100 damage from stage 2 to 6. Now it's just 60, so reducing it. But they're making the tooltip match so that way you can kind of identify it. Thornplate armor no longer heals the units based on the damage dealt, but they're going to increase the damage. This might hurt like Malphite a lot, like some of the Malphite openers we play around Thornplate armor because the healing was really relevant. So just something to think about. But Thornplate armor was really good. It's very sneaky OP at the beginning of the game. So we'll see if Thornplate armor is as oppressive versus you should just be clicking it when you need a Bramble Vest. I think they're trying to like make it so it feels like it's less oppressive early game if you have a 2-star frontliner like a Rel or a Malphite do. And then Wandering Trainer, 2 gold from 6 to 8. So I mean, now you guys get to click Wandering Trainer more often and starter kit. Hooray! Did you forget Tiny Team? No, it was not. I mean, I can do it right now. Control F. Tiny Team. Adobe Acrobat has finished their document. No matches were found. Uh-oh. Let's move over to items. Quicksilver base attack speed. Quicksilver, the rework to Quicksilver, I actually said that I thought it was going to be pretty decent, but then I didn't do the math, and the math said that it was going to be bad, and that was something that I should have done the math on before I said that, but it's okay. It's going to be wrong. I actually, at the end of this patch notes, I wrote what I predicted for the previous patch, and I also predicted something for this next patch, so a little fun opportunity to laugh at me or glaze me, depending on how you view it. But they're buffing Quicksilver's base attack speed, which is relevant, right? The 15% attack speed, that definitely is nice. Titan's Resolve. This is the rework to Titan's Resolve. It no longer grants 15 armor and magic resistance at stacks. Instead, it's going to grant damage amp instead. This is because they want Titan's Resolve to be less about like the super, drain tanky type of stuff, and instead more and give Titan's Resolve a little bit better identity as well relative to Quicksilver because they both have CC immunity. So they're giving it 10 damage amp at max stance, and that's actually double for rating item. The general rule is double the stats of the baseline item. So there you go. Same thing with Quicksilver, right? Although they're giving Quicksilver a significant attack speed buff from 25 to 40. Then they're also buffing Radiant Adaptive Helm. It's just been underperforming because it's always been Jack of all trades, but Master of None, except it's not even really Jack of all trades. It's just been bad. Radiant Giant Slayer, as they gave it way too much damage amp. It was like the best item in the game on any unit, period. So they're just nerfing it, which is justified. And then yeah, the Radiant Titans buff. And then for the second pair of items, where's the Giant Slayer nerf? They're not nerfing base Giant Slayer. I mean, honestly, if anything, base Giant Slayer is really powerful. But doesn't it feel good to say I'm Giant Slayer now? I feel like it's like a positive thing that Giant Slayer is good. Okay, maybe it's like too powerful. But like I think the Giant Slayer being good has been good for item economy. It feels like you have more options instead of just like feeling you have dead components. Especially if you're playing AP and you get a bunch of swords. The really big problem with some of these like AP lines, you're playing Rod and tier based comps, you get a bunch of swords, and now it feels like it's been good and positive for item economy. All right, Silvermere Dawn has been buffed. No one asked for this. Personally, I never asked for this, but if you look at the stats, Silvermere Dawn is horrendous still. Mainly because they took the mana away from Silvermere Dawn. And so they're just slowly but surely trying to reintroduce it because, giving it more stats, maybe it's more playable. Silvermere Dawn, I mean, they're buffing Jace, they're buffing all that stuff. Maybe Silvermere Dawn Jace is going to be a terror again this set or this patch. That's one of my predictions. Talisman of Ascension is getting a big buff. Holy cow. Oh, wait, I didn't write it. It's HP, 300 HP to 500 HP. Sorry, this doesn't tell you anything. 300. Talisman of Ascension is getting a 300 HP buff to 500. Trenchcoat's just been disabled from the game. They haven't been able to figure out a good identity for Trenchcoat. Trenchcoat also feels really punishing to people who don't understand how to build around it. It says health. Oh, okay, cool. Never mind. I got there. If you play Trenchcoat, a lot of times you actively made your unit worse, right? Because you need to have like Protector's Vow for the starting mana and Steric's Gauge to like synergize with like keeping it alive when it's split, so you can get like the 3 shields. If you didn't have it, it actively like made a lot of your units like bad. And then there's like some weird rules around it. Plus there were some bugs that were unintended for a while. Like people play Suspicious Trenchcoat with Shadow Clone, and if you split, all your Shadow Clones actually were real copies, not fake copies. And so they would do full damage. So some people were like bug abusing Shadow Clone with Suspicious Trenchcoat on like Caitlyn, for example, to cast 4 3-star Caitlyn ults. Really uncool. So like a lot of those interactions, it's just too much of a headache. So they're disabling Suspicious Trenchcoat from the game. Just problematic both from bug and balance wise. So, and also player like legibility. Like it's just hard to understand if it's good. And finally, Mogul's Mail is getting nerfed. Mogul Mail too good. This is also a nerf to some of the augments like All That Shimmers and Shimmer's Coalescence. So Mogul's Mail, it's just reducing the gold count. It's a pretty big deal. You might think, oh, just 2 seconds, but that 2 seconds, one, means that you're less likely to farm 2 gold twice instead of at 16 seconds, it's 20 seconds, but also you're less likely to farm even 1 gold. So this might make Mogul's Mail really not that good unless you have an absolute good setup for it. And even then, it's significantly less gold over time. Like a huge nerf to Mogul's Mail. All right. So those are all the items. We're now going into power-ups. Some power-ups have been disabled from the game, and you knew about one of them. You actually kind of knew about two of them. Stretchy Arms has been disabled from the game, but Rare Treat is also disabled from the game because it makes sense. There's no levels anymore. But they're also taking out some other ones that are either too problematic or for ones that are just are not that fun. And I think Cyclone Rush, Essence Share, Pure Heart, these are ones in Selfish. These are ones that are not that interesting, not that fun. But they're taking out Fusion Dance because Fusion Dance is one of those power-ups that creates a huge power gap between, let's say, Darius that has that Fusion Dance versus not, right? Have you guys played Darius with him without Fusion Dance on heavyweights? It's a huge power gap between that. Same thing with, like, historically, units that really like Fusion Dance, like Zac, Hero Augment, for example, Gwen in the past. And they also buff Jace, so theoretically that could make Jace Fusion Dance too good. They just feel like Fusion Dance is just way too OP, which, you know what, is lore accurate. If you remember, I mean, Fusion Dance, a Dragon Ball reference, it just literally, like, exponentially increased the power of the people that fuse. So it just makes sense. That's just too OP. They had to retire it. So Fusion Dance no longer. They'll stay separate. But Stretchy Arms is gone. So an 07 salute to all of these power-ups that we're going to be saying goodbye to. Okay. Now, the thing is, these power-ups, they're going to get also, there's going to be 2 waves of power-up changes. There's going to be a bunch of buffs and nerfs and adjustments to it. And then there's also going to be the power-up pool adjustment. Believe it or not, we are halfway through the patch notes. The first thing, and this is probably going to, I probably should have made this in bigger letters, but there's going to be adjustment to the system of power-ups. Secondary power-ups are going to appear less often. If you don't understand what a secondary power-up is, I'm going to have to pull up, let's pull up Meta TFT, for example. Actually, let's pull up data. Let's just pull up Meta TFT, for example. Okay. So if you don't understand what the difference between a primary and a secondary, let's take a unit like Aatrox, for example. Aatrox, I don't know if you guys have ever looked at it, but if you take a look at their table of power-up possibilities, some have higher percentages like Mecha Blade and Adaptive Skin Body Change, and some have lower percentages like Spiky Shell, Unstoppable, and Socialite. That's not in the game anymore. They got B-patched out, but that's something to think about. Now, the reason why that's important is that those aren't flat percentages of every time you fruit. It's the percentages of them showing up in certain slots. This is a discovery made by a community member based on the interactions. But in power fruits, you're offered 3 slots. 1, 2, 3, right? Let's just say Adaptive Skin, Regenerative, and Socialite. The first slot, from what I've come to understand, and again, I hope that I get this right because these things are not fully explained out in the rules, but the first slot is always offered as a primary option. The percentages that you see out of Aatrox, Mecha Blade, Adaptive, Body Change, etc., all the way down to Tankzilla, these are all considered the highest percentage chance, aka primary. And you are guaranteed one of those, that first slot to be one of these power-ups. But then the other slots are not guaranteed to be power-ups. You also have a slot that's for the secondaries, mixed with the primaries. I don't know the exact appearance rate, so this is where my knowledge starts to fade off. But I know for a fact that you're guaranteed that first slot to be a primary. And so what they're trying to do is they're trying to adjust the appearance rate of secondary power-ups to appear less often so that you could find the power-ups that are relevant for the champion that you want. Because one of the biggest pain points, let's say you're trying to look for a really important one on your Karma. Let's say that you're in a tournament setting, and let's say that you have tens of thousands of people watching you, and they're waiting. They're with bated breath, they're holding themselves on the edge of their seats in anticipation for you to low roll so they can type capital L, capital O, capital L in chat when you miss. And you look for a very specific power-up on Karma because you just know that she really needs something like Mage. And you roll it. You do your best. You hold 4 to 5 fruits. You greed every single fruit remover you possibly can. You look for it and you miss. You roll fruit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You miss. And you explode in a fit of rage, much to the delight of many people who are just sitting there hate watching you. That feels bad. That feels bad. They don't want that to happen very often. So they're adjusting that so that it appears less often for secondary powers in your power moves can be more common. All right, so here are all the changes to the other power-ups. Classy is getting buffed, 40 to 45%, and now it only appears with a silver tier or higher. So if you're trying to look for a classy, you need to have 2 of the traits activated on that unit, theoretically, right? So if you're looking for classy on Swain, you need to have Sorcerer activated. Desperado. Oh, sorry, with silver tier. So, oh no, silver tier, not bronze. Oh, actually, I misread that. Silver is actually high enough. Oh, never mind, just kidding. You need to be activated on the 2nd tier. So that is like you want 5 Battle Academia instead of 3. Oh, that's actually a big deal. Okay, never mind, just kidding. Desperado, buff from 12 to 8, but they nerfed the amount of AD gain, which, you know, Desperado is just not a very common power-up. So that's a pretty good buff because I think a lot of people view that it takes too many attacks to actually trigger the AD. So they lower the amount of it. Oh, sorry, this is supposed to be red. Drift Duo no longer has a stage restriction. Instead, you can get it at any point in the game. So if you're looking for Drift Duos at any point, it's a buff. Hungry Hero is now buffed as well. Higher base AD, higher HP. This is the Briar Bite thing where, like, if you sacrifice some HP, you give stats to your champion. But they're taking it off of stage 3, so you can't snowball it too much. So you only can offer it in stage 4, I believe. Icebender. Icebender actually got a lot of changes. They actually just basically restructured Icebender almost entirely. Icebender is Rise's specific champion power-up. Less damage amp. Less duration on the chill. No longer applies 25% bonus immediately on Kaz. I thought that was a bug, but apparently that's like just something that they changed. It now chills on the first instance of spell damage. It now amplifies all ability damage by 20%, applies 10% of all total damage in initial burst, and each instance of ability damage applies chill for 1 second. So we got a whole rainbow of changes to Icebender. Is it good? No clue, man. I think this is a nerf because they're nerfing the immediate burst plus the damage amp, but I think it's a nerf. Hard to say. Okay. Power-ups number 3 out of 4. Sorry, I was just reading chat to see if I was missing anything. Final boss is now only offered after stage 4. Golden Edge no longer offered on stage 3. Here's one of the other big changes. They're cutting down the number of PvE-related power-ups. So Golden Edge no longer works on PvE rounds, and that's going to apply to a couple of different champions. So no longer fishing for Golden Edge on stage 1 to min-max your Golden Edge attacks. Which theoretically should actually check some of the Fast 9 comps that are getting buffed as well. Golden Gloves. Golden Gloves is Kabuko's champion-specific power-up, where the more interest you get, the more AD he gets. That's getting buffed pretty significantly by 50%, so huge buff to that. Oh, sorry, 33%, 1/3. The weight increase means you're more likely to see it on Kabuko now. Heart of Gold no longer off on stage 3. That's a good thing. You don't want Heart of Gold usually past the early game, so that's just improving your pool. Hero's Arc has been reduced in possibility, and so you can't get Hero's Arc as often. Max Speed getting buffed at its base stats. Just a pitiful amount of attack speed. It's been pretty bad. Max Vitality. Combat Start no longer stacks on PV rounds. Another PV stack getting axed. Mecha Blade is now getting buffed, but you only can get it on stage 2, which is is one of those things where if you need to fish for it, you need to fish for it early. Otherwise, you're not going to get offered it. So it could be perceived as a buff or a nerf, depending on what you're playing. I'm assuming it's generally a buff because I don't want to get Mecha Blade if I'm not trying to play on my Aatrox. Mech Pilot stat share has been nerfed, but important things. 1, it no longer has a stage restriction, so you can get Mecha Pilot whenever. 2, if you already have Mech Pilot, you're guaranteed, kind of like fan service, right? That's a really big deal. If you play fan service, you get guaranteed second fan service. If you have it on Rakan or Xayah, same thing. If you have Mech Pilot, you actually are guaranteed to have it. Then also they fixed a bug where Executioners now apply spell crit, because that was actually a really sad thing. You put the Executioners in the Mech Pilot, they would lose that crit ability. So that is a bug fix that's huge. So now Mech might be fully back on the menu for a Mech Pilot. Keep that in mind. Me Mech, no Scout, no Pivot. Last page of power-up buffs and nerfs and adjustments. Midas Touch no longer offered on stage 3. That's generally a good thing. but you can see as a bad thing. We'll see. Ordinary no longer offered on stage 3. Ordinary is the build different one where you get attack speed and HP if you have no traits. It's also buffed in weight, so you can see it more often. So probably a stage 2 thing. Ramping Rage getting buffed. This is the free Rage Blade, I guess. You get 3.5% attack speed instead of 3%. Shining Bright. This is Lux's specific power-up. Lux is getting a double bonus damage buff. That's huge. Singularity getting buffed as well from 10 to 15 health, which, by the way, they just keep buffing Singularity patch after patch. But also no longer works on PV rounds. So, again, another PV stacking kill. Spirit Sword. This is one of the ones that people play on Jhin, for example. The bonus magic damage is getting nerfed. So this is actually a pretty sizable nerf to Jhin. Starry Night getting buffed. That is Rel's champion-specific power-up. That's getting buffed. Stormbender is getting nerfed to 22%. Really strong on some very burst-oriented comps like Karma Sorcerers, for example. I think it's actually one of the pickables besides Mage if you want. And then Veteran has been re-enabled. Veteran is the one that turns the unit into a mentor. So you can turn Katarina into a mentor. You can turn Kalista into a mentor. It's been re-enabled and bug fixed to properly work when you start up units on the bench. So hopefully that fixes all the bugs and you can play Veteran Mentor reroll. And then Weights is no longer offered on stage 3, which is good because it's just too late for Weights. You need to lose like 5 rounds for it to be good. Okay, so those are all the power-up changes. Now, here's the thing. That's just the power-ups, but this is the big kahuna. 1 of 9. They went through all the champion, like almost every champion in the game. And when I tell you, man, that it took a really long time to do this section alone took 2 hours. They basically did a giant pass on who could get what, and they moved things from primary to secondary to just straight up removed. The way the color coding is working is that if it's green, it has to do with primary, and that's a big deal because primaries are more likely to show up now. If it's yellow, it's moved to secondary or adds a secondary or something like that. And if it's red, it's just straight up Axe. You can't get it anymore. Okay. I'm going to do my best to kind of go through this as quickly as possible and highlight things that are interesting because a lot of it is actually like stuff that, you know, for example, Ordinary on Ezreal is not that interesting, but it's just something I'll make a comment if I think it's noteworthy. But Aatrox, they're removing Colossus and Hungry Hero. Ezreal, they're removing Ordinary. They're moving things like Fairy Tail and Final Form to secondary. Garen, Living Wall, that's the stuff that buffs the backline with attack speed based on resistances. That's moved to secondary. Singularity moved to secondary. Kalista got 5 things moved to primary. Stormbender, Mage, Power Fawn, Precision, and Veteran. So now if you're looking for Veteran reroll on Kalista, you want to play Veteran, Kalista, 4 Mentor, Executioners, move to primary. That's one of the big things to think about if you want to play around it. Bludgeoners move to secondary. Final Form move to secondary. They don't want everything jammed up in primary. Kahuna Huna remove, which just makes sense. I didn't even realize you can get down her. And attack expert as well. Kale. Shadow Clone has been moved to primary, which is actually quite good for Kale if you've ever played it. Stormbender removed. Magic Ember removed. Kenai removed. These all make sense. These are not particularly amazing on Kale in particular. Kennen, Supreme Surge. That is his hero-specific or champion-specific power-up that heals him on Execute. I think that's good for his tanking. So this is specifically a power-up that you want on Tank Kennen. They buff Tank Kennen. They moved it to primary. Atomic and Final Form moved to secondary, and then over 9,000 Singularity and Supremacy removed. I think this nerfed the Kennen hero augment because over 9,000 is specifically good on carries. And so they're having over 9,000 Kennen removed. I don't know if that affects his hero augment. They haven't specifically noted it because on other units like Zac, for example, they did say hero. So just something to note. Give me a second. I need to take a swig. Okay. Lucian, Classy, Stormbender, Power Fawn, and Shadow Clone now moved to primary. And then Kenai moved to secondary while removing Caretaker. That's the one that shields your ally on cast. Demolitionist, that's the thing that stuns on cast. Fairy Tail, which is the butterfly stuff, and Robo Ranger all been removed on Lucian. Lucian's very strong. This actually, I think, slightly nerfs Lucian because some of his ones are really good already. Although Stormbender's pretty good, though, in Shadow Clone as well. So maybe that actually might be good. Malphite moves to secondary, Final Form, and Living Wall, which are not particularly really important for him. Rel, standalone moves to primary, so Rel can get standalone pretty often. Living Wall, Spiky Shell, and Unstoppable have been moved to secondary. So now you can get Rel standalone to tank very, very often. Siver, just basically remove the useless ones like Killer Instinct, which is just so troll. Sometimes she would target the unit that was about to die, and then she miss, and nothing would happen. And Power Font. Zac now gets Unstoppable added to a secondary, right? So now it's actually it's supposed to be yellow, but he couldn't get Unstoppable before, but now Zac can get Unstoppable, but specifically saw it's a secondary. Final Form and Spiky Shell moved to secondary. Classy, Dark Amulet, and Flinching have now been added to primary Zac hero augments. So the hero augment for Zac can now get new primary power-ups. And then Kenai added to secondary, because before you couldn't get these for Zac. I think Classy might be one of the better ones for him, maybe, because if you want to play around heavyweight Zac, because you can't get Fusion Dance, but I'm not sure. It's just one of those things where maybe Zac hero augment is unplayable. 3 out of 9. Let's go to the 2 cost. Dr. Mundo, Hungry Hero, removed. Can't get that. Gangplank. They added Gather Force, Mage, and On the Edge for Gangplank. They removed not only Stretchy Arms, but Robo Ranger, moved to secondary. Attack Expert, Golden Edge, and Desperado removed from Gangplank. Janna. They added actually some really interesting ones. Look at this. Janna got added Mage, over 9,000, Ramping Rage, and perhaps one of the more interesting ones, Janna can now become veteran as well. They actually gave Janna the ability to be played as a veteran reroll in Mentors. So they're trying to give some interesting reroll outs to maybe have Janna primary carry in a couple different ways. So keep an eye out for that. They removed Bullet Hell, Fairy Tail, Demolitions, and Super Genius from Janna. Jin, Stormbender, and Spirit Sword moved to primary. You know what? I didn't even realize Spirit Sword wasn't primary. So when I missed Spirit Sword, I just thought that was unlucky. Turns out it wasn't very common. So it was secondary, so now they moved it. And Bludgeoner moved to secondary. Kaisa, Stormbender, Precision moved to primary. Bludgeoner moved to secondary. And they've removed... I didn't even realize you could get half this shit. Hungry Hero, okay. Double Strike, Kahuna Huna, okay. Demolitionist, Golden Edge, and Desperado all removed on Kaisa. I didn't even realize you can get so many of these. That's how rare they were, so... Katarina, Crimson Veil has been moved to a primary. It's a really good one on Assassins in particular, as we have seen. So they moved that to primary, and they removed Fairy Tail, Magic Expert, Colossal, and Tiny Terror. And this is actually a big buff if you're looking for veteran Katarina as well, because you're more likely to get it. Lux, Stormbender, and Shadow Clone moved to primary. Kenai moved to secondary. Demolition is removed. Caretaker removed. Vi just removed a bunch of different ones like Singularity, push-ups, and Demolition. These are like scaling ones, right? Singularity, HP, push-ups, damage amp. These are all just scaling, as well as Spiky Shell moved to secondary. Xin Zhao got Unstoppable and Singularity moved to secondary. Ari, so we're on 3 cost now. Ari gets Shadow Clone now. So now you can actually play Shadow Clone Luden's Ari, which is that's gonna be kind of scary, especially because the way the overkill works. We'll see. Kenai, Fairy Tail, and Caretakers, some adjustments there. Caitlyn now has some useless ones removed, like Max Speed and Ordinary. Didn't even realize that. Bludgeoner moved to secondary. Darius has Blink Attack removed, which I actually thought Blink Attack was like not too bad, but maybe it's bad. Hemorrhage removed. Crimson Veil add to primary, and On the Edge moved to secondary. They removed Kog'Maw's Critical Threat, Spirit Sword, and Kenai. These are not particularly amazing. You're just really unhappy to see them, so that makes sense. Malzahar now has Hat Trick and Caretaker moved to secondary, and removed Killer Instinct. Shadow Clone, this is a B patch note. I think this was just because they already moved it for B patch and Kenai. So now it's really removed. They removed it twice. Nico, Stanaloo moved to primary. She's a better tank this patch. Spiky Shell moved to secondary. Spiky Shell in general, not that exciting. So they just moved it to secondary for a lot of these people. For the Nico Hero Augment, Atomic has been removed. Regenerate has been removed. Body Chain has been removed because she's not a tank. She's a carry. Instead, they added Critical Threat, Unflinching, Kenai, and Crimson Veil now moved to primary. So now you won't miss Crimson Veil on Nico Hero Augment very often, which is thumbs up. That's their best one, I think. So improving the likelihood that you don't use all your fruits on Nico Hero Augment and miss. Senna got Ramping Rage and Precision moved to primary or added. Attack Expert removed. Smolder now has Bludgeoner moved to secondary and Desperado removed, which makes sense because he's not a attack speed carry. Swain had Soul Chipper. I didn't even realize that Soul Chipper could be a thing on Swain. I think I've seen it actually once or twice. That's the one that shreds magic resistance based on damage. It's never good on Swain. Just remove it. Useless. Udyr, Hungry Hero, 100 push-ups, just useless. Viego, not only did he lose stretchy arms, he also lost Blade NATO, Surge 66, and Golden Edge, which I don't think anyone is complaining that much about. All very weak ones. Ziggs, Keen Eye has been moved to secondary, and Demolitionist has been removed. I thought Demolitionist was actually not the worst, but it's been straight up removed. Akali, Crimson Veil, has now been moved to primary. So now you're going to hit Crimson Veil and Akali very often. And Akali got buffs. Keep an eye out for that. Sky Piercer has been moved to secondary. No Magic Expert, no Trickster. Ashe has a bunch of stuff that's just not good. Critical Threat. Apparently you could get over 9,000 on Ashe. I've never seen that. Spirit Sword removed and Precision removed on Ashe as well. Jinx lost Desperado, Hemorrhage, and Precision. Cassante added another tank one, adaptive, primary, atomic, secondary, spiky shell, secondary, ordinary, waste, and warming up all removed. These are all carry ones, and you would never want carry on Cassante unless you had all out, except you're starting to see the conundrum. You need to have all out power up plus this, which you can't do. Karma, critical threat, now moved to primary. Stormbender moved to primary, and now Kenai moved to secondary. Removed Super Genius and Caretaker. These are just ones that you never really want on Karma. You're never really building Super Genius like full mana Karma. 7 out of 9. Poppy, standalone moved to primary. Spiky Shell moved to secondary. Strong Spark removed from Poppy, just improving the pool for Poppy. Rise, Kenai moved to secondary. Critical Threat, Super Genius, and Magic Expert removed. It just makes sense. These are not ones that you want. Actually, Magic Expert you could justify, but Samira on the edge moved to primary. That's Samira's best. Power up. So that's good for her. Just really improving that consistency on it. Bludgeoner, Killer Instinct, and Ordinary all either moved to secondary or removed. Set is now has standalone moved to primary, and Strong Spark removed because Set's a pretty decent solo frontliner for a big portion of the game. Best Defense removed, and Spiky Shell moved to secondary. That should be yellow. Sorry, there's a lot of like. I said that this part took a long time. Kenai from Yumi moved to secondary, and then you removed Classy, Fairy Tale, Power Fawn, and Caretaker. This is actually a huge buff to Yumi because it feels like now you're not going to get... I can't tell you how many times when you fruit Yumi, it feels like you just get like exactly these options. So the fact that they've been removed improves Yumi's consistency a lot. So we'll see. 5 cost. We're not done yet, guys. 5 cost. Braum. Oh my god, Braum got a straight up lobotomy. This dude just got everything removed. Efficient, Colossal, Attack Expert, Serious Slam, Standalone, Living Wall, Strong Spark, Weights. Braum just lost everything. And now moved to Crimson Veil, Bludgeoner added to secondary, and Critical Threat added to secondary. The reality is, man, Braum did not want to get fruit. Braum did not want to get fruit at all because it just felt like so many of these things were just not good. So now maybe you want to fruit Braum and give him Crimson Veil, get some damage going, you know? They removed over 9,000 on Echo, which again, going back to, didn't even realize that was possible, but yeah, they removed over 9,000 on Echo. Gwen can now get Ramping Rage for scaling attack speed, which I'm surprised that's the case because I don't perceive attack speed being that important on Gwen, but maybe it is. Kenai moved to secondary. Sky Pierce moved to secondary. Solar Breath moved to secondary. And they removed Colossal on Gwen. So big Gwen, large Gwen, no longer a thing. Sorry to all the people who... Sorry to all the gooners out there. And then Tiny Terror removed. Lee Sin, Sky Piercer added to secondary. And then they removed a bunch of useless ones on Lee Sin, like Blade NATO, Attack Expert, Blind Attack, Golden Edge, and Serious Slam. Golden Edge, Lee Sin. I think all of these, by the way, like Weights, over 9,000 Golden Edge, were like in case you got like got it on stage 3. Like you recombobbed into a 5 cost, you went to 7, you rolled, you can find some way to scale them, but they're just not good ones. Seraphine, Kenai moved to secondary, and Ramping Rage moved to secondary. Last but not least, we made it. Twisted Fate, Demolitionist removed. Varus, Hyperactive removed. Precision removed. Yone, Tankzilla removed. I saw this actually in tournament with Brosted. Brosted's like, wait, Tankzilla and Yone? Did you see that? I saw for the first time in tournament. Desperado removed. And then Zyra, Kenai added to secondary. Efficient removed. And Hyperactive removed. Oh my God. And you can kind of see that my attention to detail just got lost. I have to show you guys this because this patch notes document was 27 pages long. And when they got to this like remove thing, I gotta tell you, when they need like, this is me publicly asking Riot Games to change the formatting. Imagine typing all this while reading this on the second monitor. This is so unreadable, man. Just please, if you ever do a pass like this, I just can't. Like, I'm on page 16 of 27, 17, and so I'm just going through this. Move the secondary, move the primary. They formatted for HTML. No, thank you. Bug fixes. Now, I regret to inform you guys, for all the people that love the sound of nature, Rammus will no longer permanently play a sound effect when he dies with his shield active. That is depending on how you view it, that is a buff or a nerf. So I've highlighted in yellow. Rest in peace. Rest in piss. Rammus SFX 07. The Mighty Mech can critically strike when given the executioner trait. That's actually a double bug fix. They fix it on the units as well as the mech itself. Items can no longer rarely be deleted when selling units immediately after equipping them. Great. Icebender functions on ghost armies. Great. It's a huge buff. Dazzling displays tooltip correctly states that reduce the percentage damage of enemies. That's also great. Grand Slam properly makes Luchador jump at the start of combat. This is what they fixed allegedly about the augment, so whether they can reintroduce it, so it's good. Tiny but Deadly properly re-enabled. Giant and Mighty properly re-enabled. If you guys forgot about this, they were supposed to have this augment in the previous patch, but they somehow lost track of it or whatever. But it's a pretty good generic augment. It's generic combat augment. Your team gets bigger, gain 300 health and 5% max HP. That's pretty good. That's actually good for a lot of comps currently in the game. So if you see this generic one, try it. It's actually quite good. Tiny but Deadly TFT. This one, Tiny but Deadly, trying to use an example of it. Here we go. Okay, I need a higher resolution of it. I have a picture of Emily Wang. Why is it just all pictures of Emily Wang? Your team is 50% smaller, but moves and attacks 30% faster. So it's a big attack speed buff to your whole team. Generally really good for melee comps because the walk speed is really relevant. So if you're playing like heavyweights, it could be really strong. Back when we played Yone reroll, he was a 3 cost instead of 11. It was really good for Tiny but Deadly Yone. So I would probably say that Tiny but Deadly would be really good in heavyweights, pretty good in like Bastion Yasuo or something like that. Just generally good with that. Double Trouble now grants the 2-star unit if a champion is 3-starred while on the bench. Wonderful. Pumping Up now displays the correct starting value in the augment card. Great. Drift Duo now applies +1 mech when Senna is one with the power up. This was actually a bug fix because when you had Drift Duo on Senna, sometimes it didn't work. Drift Duo no longer provides its bonus if you remove Senna or Lucian after they both 3-starred. So Drift Duo was bugged where basically you could lose the +1 mech and play 6 out of 7 mech. Monster Trainer no longer loses her cast if her target becomes untargetable during her initial cast time. She'll now redirect to a new target ability. This is actually an insane buff. I should have highlighted this in neon green and put this in like size 72 font. This is actually one of the biggest changes to Ahri on top of her buff. Now she'll no longer fizzle her cast, which is like a really, really, really big deal. So, yeah. And then Psychic Forge and Quality over Quantity are mutually exclusive. So, this is just like making sure that... I actually don't even realize what the whole point is. The whole point of this is probably just to make sure that they can't just like do some kind of exploit or something like that. I'm not sure. Anyways, Ahri's getting a massive buff. So, this is my initial impressions of the patch. Okay, so they said it was light, but I think this is a massive patch. That's my first thing. I'm gonna throw out some predictions here, and they could be wrong, they could be right. So some of them are like, I'll explain it, but I think the biggest losers clearly are things that depend on stretchy arms. I think Viego is gonna take a huge dip. I don't know if Viego reroll is gonna be a thing anymore. So we'll see, because I think stretchy arms was so good. Maybe he's really good enough with artifacts that's okay. Maybe just play. Maybe you just have to play him with like with RFC and snipers. But we'll see. Augment nerfs. Some of these augment nerfs are crazy big. Like 9 lives, the big nerf. Caretaker's chosen is a huge nerf. Care package. So I think some of these are the biggest losers of the patch. I think some of the power-up sackers, like Golden Edge and stuff like that, that's a big deal. That actually makes Golden Edge slow down significantly, especially because the way people min-maxed it. So it's something that snowballs it. And obviously, hero augments took a really big L as well, like some big nerfs to Mundo and Zac. Some of the biggest winners of the patch, my prediction, I think this one is pretty easy to make. I think Ari and some of the 3-cost rerolls are going to be insane. If there's anything that's like what people complain about, it might be the B patch worthy. It might be Ari. Gangplank and Katarina are going to be some of the biggest winners as well. Aura farming at 4-3 is going to be insane. I picked that as well. Braum is just good. I think Braum is just going to be the 5-cost you play around, and they also fix his power up. So if you hit Braum, especially off R farming, maybe that's the guy. I actually think the Volibear Edgelord buff is a big deal based off like the way I've understood Volibear to work. So I think Volibear, I don't know if I should put this in parentheses. I don't even know if you play Volibear and Edgelord. Maybe you still play him in the existing comps like Mentor Mech. But it is a pretty big buff to Volibear. So I think that's going to be the case. No mention to Mech. The problem with Mech is you still have to hit Yone, but I mean that could be good too. Hard to say / we shall see. So like the Yuumi rework, I think this is pretty strong, so I'm like leaning towards it. I don't know if the Yuumi rework is going to be as flexible as they want it to be, because I think there's just going to be a new optimized version of Yuumi. Personally, I think the more likelihood is that Yuumi just plays a different way now, and that's the board you play. But I think it's going to be strong. Monster rework, I think it's going to be kind of weak, because I think their power, part of the reason why Monster Trainer was good was that it scaled so hard and it had really powerful late game scaling like Kog'Maw and Smolder. And now that they don't have that, I think that it's just like a nice splash unit, but you don't really play it very often. I don't know how to interpret all the power up changes. I don't really, it's just, this is so much like if, but I think if there's one thing that I'm excited to play is all the veteran stuff. I think the Akali and Ashe changes aren't actually that good for them. I think Ashe changes are especially not good for her, but I had to see. I don't think Akali is that big of a deal. I think this doesn't fix Akali's problems personally. And I think that Akali won't be that impactful personally, but we'll see. I don't know how to interpret Titan's Resolve rework as well, because it's just an underplayed item. I assume that it just means that Titan's Resolve is more slammable on some melee carries, but they did nerf some of the melee carries like Hero Augments. Hero Augments were actually some of the units that actually wanted Titan's Resolve, like Malphite and Garen. So I don't know if that's good. Ryan says the buff that the Akali change is a buff. That's correct. If you actually look at the slides as well, it's a buff. But I'm saying, like, is it actually going to be good? I don't think it's going to be that good. And then Crystal Gambit, I think it's a really big change. So I think Crystal Gambit is on the weaker side of the top end cash out stuff, but it still might make it more accessible to play just for resources. So it might be just like fun. And then if you want me to be held accountable, if you want to laugh, this is my prediction from last patch. So I predicted that Crew Malphite was going to struggle a little bit more. I was wrong about that. I predicted that Mentor Rise was going to struggle. I was wrong about that. I predicted that Yuumi would suck. I was right. Kraken's Fury ended up being neutral, so anything, they didn't change. And then I was actually wrong about a lot of this. I was right about Boo Buff being really good. I was right that Mech was good and Mundo Hero Augment was good. And then it's not like Twisted Fate Endgames is like that great. So I mean, Twisted Fate is really good with the Bastion, so that was kind of right. And then Samira and Soul Fighters was playable, so you know what? I'll call that as a win. And then Star Guardian, Poppy Chase. To be fair, this was before the B patch as well. And then Wraith buffs. I wasn't, but this is a straight like W for Wraith. Wraith was like super good buff, and I said that I wasn't sure. So I said that like I think it leans towards being pretty good, but I couldn't tell. So anyways, that's my Scuffs patch notes rundown. That is it for me. So thank you everyone for sitting through that. That was really long. That was like an hour and a half because there was so much content. If you enjoyed watching or reading this, I'm going to be uploading this to YouTube. I'm actually going to be posting literally this link in chat and also on my YouTube channel. Consider checking out my content channels. Twitch.tv/Frodan, Twitch.tv/FrodanTV or Frodan2 for all my tubers and talks and drama and guides and stuff like that. But overall, I hope you guys enjoy the patch. So yeah, that's it. See you guys next time. Make sure to like and subscribe. Thanks. All right, /marker end patch notes rundown. So yeah,